Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Piratas previously recorded. So, sorry for the disappointment. This is not a Whiskey Friday. Well, not per se. I'm not going to stand in the way of you if you want to have a wee dram. But I think this is a long overdue sort of off the cuff chat about a extremely relevant topic that has been unpacked to quite some degree in the news media and is part of a sort of ongoing social media discussion because every week and almost every day there's a new example of it, whether we're talking zamas, whether or not we're talking tavern shootings, whether or not we're talking taxi warfare, whether or not we're talking armed robberies, rape, that sort of stuff. Violence in the South African context is, I think, as relevant as it has ever been. And you know what? I'm not going to do a deep dive into crime statistics. We quickly have to talk about them just to add context to what is probably a philosophical and practical discussion about the implications of violence for you as a citizen and what you can do to essentially keep yourself and your family safe or safer or lower your risk in this milieu we live in. The fact is, we do have to unfortunately talk about crime stats very quickly. I am assuming that you are living in South Africa. And by living in South Africa, you are to some degree aware of what violence and violent crime in South Africa is, the level that it currently finds itself at. We'll quantify that in a little moment, and that you're not living under a complete rock. And therefore, I don't want to overemphasize something you're already aware of. But let's color between the lines a bit, and let's add some truth bombs to this. So South Africa is, once you correct for outliers and for statistical anomalies, in the top 6 most murderous nations on earth. Once we correct for populations over 10 million, or rather 10 million and larger, we're sitting in the number 2, number 3 position of the second or third most murderous country on earth. And this is something we've sustained, a position we've sustained for well over the past 10, 15 years. And when you go look at our crime statistics, our murder rate really took off again for the first time 2011, 2012. The Civilian Secretariat of Police commissioned a research paper by the Wits School of Governance in 2015, I think end of 2014, beginning 2015, to look at the first 15 years from the year 2000 until the end of the year 2014, that 15-year period pertaining the effect that the Firearms Control Act of 2000 had on reducing violence and violent crime and so-called gun violence in SA. The paper is on my website. I'll link it in the description below as well for you to read. It's about 178 pages, but it found very little to no evidence that the FCA of 2000 had any impact on crime or violence at all, but that strong policing had a massive impact on the level of violent crime. And as we saw after the 2010 Football World Cup in SA, the policing strategy collapsed in South Africa. And we saw a new period of dysfunction and ineffectiveness on the South African Police Services side. It has been well documented by the Institute of Race Relations. Nonetheless, we are sitting in a position where only about 19% of all murders annually are solved. And even though the NPA claims a successful prosecution rate on murder of about 75%, that means we only send about 15% of all murderers to jail every single year. With rape, it's even worse. Only about 9% of all rape cases end in successful prosecution. And with trio crimes, it is equally pathetic. Trio crimes being vehicle hijackings, robbery at residential premises, and then obviously robbery at non-residential and business premises. The conviction rate for trio crimes is less than 3% on average. So what we have in SA is violent crime, and crime in general is extremely cheap. Your chances of getting away with murder is roughly 85%. Your chances of getting away with rape is about 91%. And your chances of getting away with robbery, whether it's at someone's home, whether it's at their business, whether it's street robbery, whether it's a vehicle hijacking, is basically 97%. Looking at the numbers, we have well over 21,000 murders every year. We have well over 40,000, between 40 and 50,000 cases of rape reported every year in SA. When it comes to trio crimes, robbery with aggravating circumstances, about 150,000 of those every year. Robbery at residential premises and at non-residential premises, each just well over 20,000. Vehicle hijackings, about the same number as that every year. So we have a very high confrontational crime rate in SA, and it has been increasing. The first quarter crime stats this year compared with the first quarter last year, we had about a 22% increase in homicide, and we had a 100% increase in kidnapping. So that gives you an overall crime picture. Is we have high levels of violent crime, we have extremely low prosecution rates, we have wholly ineffective policing, and that is a situation that we currently find ourselves in. And I think to help illustrate it in a bit more visceral way, a close friend of mine grew up on the wrong side of the train tracks. He grew up in a gang family. He ran with the gangs for the majority of his childhood and adolescence. And in his early 20s, he found himself in Pollsmoor prison awaiting trial for about 8 months. And in his case, fortunately, with other members of his gang. And he tells a harrowing story, and there's a point to the story of how he barely slept. I mean, 3 to 4 hours a night sleeping at most, because the rest of his time was spent fighting people off who were trying to do horrible things to him. In his words, he wished he had a method of erasing his memory of that time. And the things that he witnessed, the depravity, the inhumanity, the barbarism of what humans are willing and able and almost wanting to do to other people that they have in their power, was absolutely frightening. To summarize it thusly, the people in prison with him spent the overwhelming majority of their time, if they weren't busy eating or sleeping, either assaulting others, trying to kill them or rape them, or succeeding in killing or raping them, or making implements with which to perform these tasks, making weapons or sourcing them, or planning how to do it if they're not physically doing it. And the reality of this is these violent, almost sociopaths are not confined to prison only. They are here in society among us, hiding in plain sight amongst the population, and very often within the very societies and communities they prey upon. I mean, Khayelitsha and Nyanga are great examples of that, where the people there are victims of violent criminals living among them. And they blend in. You might not know who these people are until it's too late. And if you think, you're immune to this, remember that we have about 20,000 plus hijackings a year, and about 75 to 85% of those happen in people's driveways. The reality is we sit with a significant number of very violent people who are adept at performing these acts of violence. And you do not want to be stuck at their mercy or caught at their mercy or within their grasp, whether it's in your driveway and certainly not in your home with your family. Because when you look at police response rates on a national level, you're lucky if your response rate is 30 minutes. It's closer to 2 hours if you have an emergency. Even armed response companies, 7 to 10 minutes. That's an awful long time of being stuck at the mercy of someone that means to do you serious harm. So it comes back to my mantra, something that I keep repeating over and over, and that is that you are always the first responder to your personal crime scene. Nobody is coming to save you. It is up to you and the actions that you take in those crucial seconds as this incident unfolds could literally mean the difference between life or death. And this is why you need to be equipped with the correct mindset, the correct skill set, and the correct equipment to triumph over those circumstances. This is now where we're going to start talking solutions as to what does it mean to you as an ordinary citizen, understanding now this environment of ultra violence that we live in, and we almost fly through it like swallows in a hailstorm and we just hope we don't get hit. To me, that's not a good enough attitude. I don't like going out there amongst my daily business or performing my daily tasks just hoping that today is not the day. That sort of just throwing a dice or flipping a coin, to me, does not seem the most responsible way of taking control of the elements that I can control, of which there are a great many. And it starts with several things, but the most important of it is mindset. And I encourage you and everyone else to develop what, it's not my words. This is something I stole from Dave Spalding, but I like his phrasing on it, to develop a combative mindset. And what a combative mindset is it's a active decision and commitment that you make to do whatever it takes, regardless of how distasteful it may be, to triumph over your aggressors, to prevail over them and your circumstances, and go home to your family or whomever it is you go home to at night alive. And the word prevail and triumph, or the words prevail and triumph, are important because surviving isn't good enough. You can survive a violent encounter and end up in ICU or in a wheelchair. Is that a win? Is that desirable? No. You want to get out of this thing with your full faculties intact and in one piece properly. So prevail and triumph. You want to go out there, and in the event of you becoming a potential victim for one or a group of these people, you want to get out of that situation and prevail. That doesn't always involve fighting, but we'll get to that in a bit. The second part that flows out of it, developing this mindset, and it's something that you have to do, and it's a decision you have to consciously make. It's not something that just comes naturally. You either have it or you don't, and if you don't have it, you have to work to develop it and to anchor it and to make it a part of your daily existence. The second part, and this is incredibly important, is situational awareness. Go take a look the next time you stop at a red traffic light and where people's heads are. They get sucked into their phones, into the screens right here in front of their face. They have absolutely no idea what's going on in their peripheral vision, that's for sure. They're not checking their mirrors. They're not seeing what's going on in front of them. This is why smash and grab attacks happen to the degree they are, because people are caught completely unawares in traffic. The thing is, your vehicle is not a safe location. It is not the same as your home, behind high walls, electric fencing, closed doors, gates, whatever it is. When you're in your vehicle on a public road, you're very much in public. There's a very thin membrane between you and the world out there. And that thin membrane can be shattered literally in the space of a second, which means, guess what? You're now face to face in that bad breath distance with somebody who's coming into that personal space of yours, possibly with the intent of doing you harm. So best keep your eyes up, away from your phone. Phone calls, social media, messages, that stuff can wait until you're in a safe and secure location. Don't get sucked into your phone, whether you're in traffic, whether you're walking around as a pedestrian. Is keep your head on a swivel. And I'm not saying you need to be paranoid and constantly be looking around you like this, but just what we like to call be situationally aware. Be in something that Colonel Jeff Cooper referred to as conditioned yellow. And I'm going to probably have to put together a whole situational course on this. I have done writings on this on my website. I'll try to link them in the description as well below. But be situationally aware. Unsuck yourself from your phone and your social media and plug yourself into your environment so that you are aware of what's going on around you. Because that brings us to the third point of getting out of things alive, is there's 3 steps to these confrontations. And the first step is evasion. Evade offensively. If something doesn't feel right, if your gut feeling is telling you that there's potential danger here and you have the opportunity to avoid it, why would you continue into that situation? Turn around. There's no shame in it. Rather avoid something altogether if you've got a bad feeling about it, or if you are picking up cues that there is a potential problem, rather than just blundering straight into it. If you don't have a choice and you have to go into a situation or go through a situation and you then do pick up trouble, if you can't avoid offensively. Sorry, that was the first one. I just mucked that up. Avoid offensive. If you can't avoid it, then evade it. Evade means escape. It's always better to win your fights by 100 meters than it is to go toe to toe and get your knuckles or blades bloodied, or worse, end up seriously hurt yourself. So the next best gap from avoidance is evasion. And the last resort, if you can't do either of those and you have now been sucked into a situation where your situational awareness hasn't saved you and your ability to extract yourself from the situation hasn't saved you, now you're confronted. And you have to make the choice as to whether or not you're going to comply with these people, and in which case there are ways of complying. As we say, there are ways of giving up without giving in, right? Always retain the opportunity to go over into some form of offensive action if you deem it necessary to save your life at that point. But for the most part, we're going to say if you're in a corner and you feel your life is in danger and an imminent threat, then perhaps fighting is then all that you have left. And then when you need to fight with everything you have in you. And that is when you're confronted by home invaders that have just kicked your door open or door down in your house while you're in there with your family. You're not going to, I presume, want your family or yourself at the mercy of these people. That's when the fight response is most certainly wholly appropriate. That's just one example of it. And we just talked about response times. You have seconds. Your second and third responders, being security companies and police, are minutes away at best. You are all that there is. And we've talked about mindset here. Now we're starting to get into skill set and equipment. Can you defend yourself? Are you physically fit enough or strong enough to defend yourself? And if the answer to those questions are no, then you need to fix that. And there are many ways of fixing that. There's a whole industry built around helping people fix this with the additional lifestyle benefits. And guess what? Your personal trainer at the gym or your CrossFit gym or the people that you do weightlifting with or the people you run or jog with, those aren't activities you do because you imagine that they're going to be of use to you in a combative application, but they certainly are, because functional strength, functional fitness in this regard is very important. Those feed into building your correct mindset. They feed into building your situational awareness as you are physically capable. And then obviously, less important than mindset, less important than skill set are your tools. And that's where something like this comes in. Standard 9mm handgun, for example, you're perfectly capable of defending yourself with one of these against multiple people who seek to do you harm. The difference being is you need to have the correct attitude, the correct skills to apply this defensive tool in order to save your own life. And this is where we start coming full circle with this thing. Mindset leads. Training feeds into your skill set. So you need some form of defensive training. And then lastly, you sit with tools, which is like the handgun. Okay. All of these things form three pillars of your own personal resilience and your ability to harden yourself against crime, violence, predation, all these bad things that circulate in our society and that you can become a victim of. There is a mistaken belief that ordinary people are not capable of applying tools like guns or unarmed combatives or any of these things I just discussed in this video in order to save their lives, which is complete nonsense. The people who do this stuff full-time, security officers, police officers, soldiers, whomever is concerned on a full-time basis with safety and security, are no different to you. They are ordinary people that have merely been trained to a highly proficient level at performing tasks that involve them confronting dangerous people on a near daily basis. You do not intend to confront dangerous people on a daily basis. You intend to avoid dangerous people on a daily basis if you can. However, you are being trained to deal with dangerous people should they confront you. And I think that emphasis is very important. However, the training is the same, and your capability of successfully managing that situation is a product of your mindset and your training, which then becomes your skills. So if you have questions about this, please pop me a message. I have a training course in the Helderberg, a basic firearm familiarization course on Wednesday evening, the 21st of September from 6 until 9. It's an after hours course for people who have absolutely no experience with guns at all. That's also linked in the description. Like I said, if you have questions on this, please bring it to me. I'm going to put my email address in the description below. Whiskey Friday will hopefully return next Friday so that you people can join us for just an evening of banter and nonsense. I hope this has unpacked the situation a bit. I'll do more shorter videos on mindset and skill set, on training, on this sort of stuff. But essentially, this is the purpose of this talk, was to give you an overall context of the situation in South Africa and what you can do as a citizen to harden yourself against it. And it starts with you. And it starts with developing your attitude into one of saying, I refuse to be a victim, and I will do whatever it takes to not be one of them. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Stay safe. Talk to you soon. Thank you. And